All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more, presented by Imperial Pizza. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for locking in, whether you're checking us out on the audio side, whether you're watching us on video. We appreciate you very much. This is our Buffalo Bills, Pittsburgh Steelers playoff matchup preview episode. As usual, I am joined this time of week by my good friend Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings. What's going on, dude? It is playoff vibes, man. Different feeling. Feels really good. What's going on? How you doing?
It feels good to be having this conversation today. Obviously, going into last weekend, it could have gone in one of two directions, and here we are. So yeah, I'm feeling all right.
How is I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but when it is a playoff week for Buffalo, and now this is something we've grown accustomed to in recent years, after going 17 years without having to worry about it, pre 2017, if I had you on every week annually, we would already be pretty much knee deep into some mock drafts. And you'd be talking about your first round running back possibilities like you do every year. But it's become a tradition, a recent tradition anyway, with the Bills this time of year. Just the vibes, man. How you feeling right now? Now so this is dropping Wednesday. We're recording this Wednesday morning. I'm sorry, this is dropping Thursday. Recording this Wednesday morning. Where you at right now, man? What's your vibes feeling like?
Yeah, I feel pretty good from a vibe standpoint, right? I mean, going into the weekend, I wasn't sure what to expect, right? And you're almost preparing yourself that Sunday night is going to be a tense-filled, pacing back and forth in front of the television debacle, to say the least, right? And it wasn't. So you feel good. Sometimes like when you anticipate kind of the worst and things really aren't that bad, that's how the weekend kind of played out from that standpoint. So right now, I mean, I've said it since we were talking during the summer, it's like, just get in. And if you just get in,
sure,
then anything can happen. And I don't say that from I expect this or I expect that, or, you know me, I try not to get too high or too low,
right?
But it's like, all right, if the Bills just get in, I like our chances.
You do. And you are right. Also, you are one of those mid guys. And by mid, I mean, you're not going to get too high when the Bills are playing well. You're not going to get too down when they're playing lousy, which I am the polar opposite. Like the sky's falling when this team's playing shitty, and I'm on top of the world when they're playing good. This past weekend, I should say, look, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was I was antsy going in, and when Pittsburgh beat Baltimore on Saturday, I'm like, oh, well, looks like the Bills are going to have to handle their business. As things turn out for me, and we're going to get into this game in just a few minutes, this Steelers matchup here, I could not have asked going into the weekend if you could have came up with any scenario, any matchup where the Bills would finish and who they would play in the first round. With respect to Pittsburgh, and I know you're going to respect them a hell of a lot more than I am, but with respect to them, this could not have worked out any better for the Buffalo Bills, winning the division and playing the team they're playing in the first round as a 2 seed. It worked out perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say winning the division and getting the opportunity to play at home, right? And I know we'll get into it. Earlier today, I was listening to your show from yesterday, and I was like, is he doing this just to sort of like tee me up for our conversation that we're about to have? Because it's just, and whoever the Bills could have played right in that scenario, whether it would have been the Steelers or potentially, thinking the Jaguars going into the weekend or then the Houston Texans, it's like, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to see a way that each of those teams can cause problems for the Bills.
I know.
And I'm not a pessimistic person, right? This is not one of those. I mean, you guys know I come on here like 95% of the time I'm predicting the Bills to win the game. But as you look at this, it's still like, gosh, man, it is Mike Tomlin. I don't know how that team is 10-7, but they're 10-7. They find a way. You watch enough of their games, they're playing their third string quarterback and all these pieces and having success. So you you just kind of look at it but there's no one that the Bills would have been playing that I would have looked at and said, oh yeah, that's the team I want to play. That's just me. So
I understand that. Nothing wrong with that philosophy either. How much has things changed in this last month? I keep going back and I think a lot about the Philadelphia game when the Bills were up in the fourth quarter. I thought they played really well. Josh Allen played out of his mind that game, and the Bills still found a way to lose. They're 6-6. It does not look good at that point. They're going into a bye. Von Miller gets in trouble during the bye week. Tyler Dunn drops that series on the back end of the bye week. And it just felt like this is a team that was on the verge, at least, of implosion. And if you and I had talked, and we did talk going into the season, and we said, hey, Bills are going to win the division again, 4th straight year. The Bills are going to be the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs again. And we would have said, yeah, absolutely. Probably expected. But if we would have said that after the Philly game, just imagine our episode, because I know there was a bye week after, and we're talking about Vaughn, and then we're talking about Tyler Dunn in this article, the good, the bad, the ugly of all of it. And at that point, if I would have said, hey, don't worry about it, man. Bills are going to win their division. Bills are going to be the 2nd seed in the AFC. I would have been like, probably this has been just like a crazy month in a good way if you're a Bills fan anyway.
Yeah, it has been so different. And you think even, it's hard when you want to compare it to last year. And a lot of people will say, well, compared to 2021, like this looked like this. And then the Bills caught fire at the right time. I even say kind of on the flip side of that, you look at last season, right? The Bills go 13-3. The 3 games that they lose, you can even argue that they could have, should have won, right? The debacle with Minnesota, the loss to the Jets, the loss to the Dolphins, all these types of things, like winning all the close games, closing things out really when they needed to. But it just, you get through that and you get to that point and you're done towards the end. You don't feel that way with the team right now, right? There's a big difference with momentum. And I know every week the Tyler Dunn article comes up in our conversation in some way, shape, or form. But that was really a point of just like, okay, how is this team going to come out and how they're going to respond? And they come out and they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And I know people can say like, oh, it's not the same Chiefs team, this or that. It's beating the Chiefs in Arrowhead, right? Like until that team is finishing like 5-12, I'm never going to write them off or just say, oh, that's not impressive. And you saw the shots from the locker room at the end of the game with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and Terry Pegula and all of this, but it is different this year. And I can say that, and I'm going off script a little here too, so just bear with me. But like,
no, go ahead, buddy.
Did you hear the interview that Sal Capaccio had with Sean McDermott on the field?
Yes.
During the broadcast after the game.
Yes.
And an emotional Sean McDermott. This is not a guy, you talk about me being mid. I mean, this guy, like his blood pressure is probably like exactly the same all throughout the day, 24/7. And to hear that emotion from the coach and that taking place, and like, he knows this, the team knows this, like they're not done. They're in the playoffs. Like they won the AFC East. Okay, they've done that the last 3 years. And it wasn't like this, this emotional, like this burden has been lifted off me or anything. And, listen, maybe just the realization of getting to the playoffs and living up to, those types of expectations. But I say it feels different because this team has been playing with a different level of emotion. The defense has been playing with a different level of emotion. Like you hear the conversation, Rasul Douglas wanting to get back in the game and Dane Jackson saying like, listen, I got you.
Yeah.
And Rasul saying like, okay, go get it. And Dane Jackson gets picked on for the first play that he's in the game, and that's fine. And then he steps up big down the stretch. Like you just see this, it feels different. Balin Spector making plays. Like, what the hell is going on here, right? Deontay Hardy, all these whipping boys that we've had throughout the year. You talk about your stars of the game. So when I say it feels different, not like in this, it's nice to be in this situation. When you see that from the head coach, like I like to see that kind of emotion, not the fist bumping, clapping, bump chest, this and that. I'm talking like a genuine, like, holy cow, like, look at our fans here. We got this. That was pretty cool.
I want to change my terminology, by the way, because when I said referred to you as mid, that's
I know what you meant.
that mid. Well, in today's world, calling somebody mid means you're just an average person. That's not what
If you were 15, I would have taken offense to it. We're good.
What I should have said was you are far more even keel than I am. You know, the
Sure.
highest of the highs, the lowest of the lows. And yeah, look, we have talked in some way, shape, or form, you and I, and a lot of people, pretty much every week since that Tyler Dunn series dropped. And with respect to him, and you and I are big Tyler Dunn fans, and we're not going to have to keep going down this road week after week after week. But what I will say to me is indisputable. Whether you loved the article, whether you thought it was accurate and fair, whether you hated the article and you thought it was bullshit, no matter which way you fall on that side of the fence, to me, the one thing that nobody can deny is that they used that. Sean McDermott or his players, the organization used that as a rallying point for this season. There's not even a question about it. To me, that was, and it was Tyler doing a job. It was Tyler, one of the best journalists in the country, writing the way he writes, and you can interpret it the way you want to interpret it. But the way the Bills interpreted it, that was bulletin board material. It's not even a debate to me. This team rallied around that. They rallied around their coach. And I think that has worn in a good way on Sean McDermott. I think the players have really rallied around him. And to your point, that post-game interview that I did hear it with Sal on the field, the fans going nuts. You could just hear it in Sean's voice, the enthusiasm, which is stark contrast from halftime when he was blasting his quarterback which Sean McDermott was right, by the way. You can't throw the ball. You got to throw the ball in the end zone. So he was very candid and blunt with that. But yeah, you know what I realized, and you realize it every year, but it takes like a season and then you remember, you're like, you know what? That's right. So many games in the NFL are one or two plays. That's what they come down to. There's a handful of games where you just get your ass kicked. There's a handful of games where you just go out and you dominate. And there's not one or two plays that ultimately decide a game. But if you really think about it, the Bills being a 2 seed, the Bills being an 11-6 team, the Bills are also a couple plays from being even better. They should have beaten the Patriots. They should have beaten the Eagles. You can look at it that way, or you can look at it as this is a very lucky team because they could have very easily lost to the New York Giants. They won by a yard. They could have very easily lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Chris Godwin gets his head up, he probably catches that Hail Mary. If Kadarius Toney doesn't line up off sides, maybe the Bills lose that game. Even if they scored, the Bills still had some time. It's just the margin in the NFL is just so razor thin. You got to put yourself in position to win games on a couple plays. But man, this has just been a wild regular season because of how many games have been close and come down to just one or two plays.
Well, every time you talk about that, it brings me back to and not a great movie, Any Given Sunday, but Al Pacino's speech in the locker room where he talks about football being a game of inches. And it is, man. I mean, like, listen, you talk about even, the Jaguars game, right? I mean, you see that play where Trevor Lawrence is lunging the football out to try and get the touchdown. And I mean, it is literally 2 inches from hitting the goal line of just like, I mean, you were talking a razor thin margin in so many ways of what takes place. I want to say one more thing on actually two more things on McDermott. One, I love the halftime interview. And I say that because I always look at these as it's like, the biggest waste of time. Like, hey, coach, what do you got to do? Like, well, we got to score more points than the other team. And, we got to stop them. Okay, thanks. Like, to actually see some sense of emotion or disappointment. I mean, the timing was not great, but great from seeing a raw response from a coach. Like, you don't see that in any game in the NFL. So I enjoyed that part. But going back to what you were saying about rallying around McDermott, you think of like anyone in your life, whether it's a sibling, a family member, or even like what I call your chosen family, like your circle of people.
Sure.
Right. It's like, yeah, that's my little brother. That's my buddy, whatever. Like I can pick on him. I can bust his chops. He can annoy me. I can, that can bother me to no end. I can say whatever I want. Somebody else outside says something about a family member, even if it's true, even if there's pieces to that where it's just like, yeah, I remember when he did that. That was annoying as hell. But like, you can't say that about him. I can. It kind of almost like, is it that type of rallying, right? Like, hey, it's one thing for this to happen. It's another thing for someone else to, I don't want to say like taking shots at our own. Like it's like you said, Tyler doing his job, doing what he needed to do. But I see it as some of that too. And I'm glad to see it. Like it's making the team better. And I think even in certain ways, when we were watching this game, I mean, tell me, the Dolphins get the ball back, right? The Bills don't get the last tush push where they can seal it away. In my opinion, right call, going for it, all fine and good. The play had been working.
Sure.
The Dolphins get the ball and you're just like, geez, okay, here we go. Like Tyreek Hill, short on time. There was no soft zone coverage. There was no playing back and we're going to give you 7 yards and let you get what you need to. They were on the line. They were right across from him, from Cedric Wilson, whatever weapons that the Dolphins had. It was like, we are going to be in your face and we're not giving you anything. And you saw Tyreek Hill getting kind of beat up and battered and taking some hits during this game and sort of like gingerly walking off to the sideline. So when you talk about a coach learning from past mistakes and different things that come about, to me, that was the takeaway from this game that no one is really talking about. And it was just like, you want to talk about growth, you want to talk about evolution. To me, that right there, it wasn't bend but don't break. It was just like, we are going to be in your face and we're not going to lose this. And they showed it. Sean
McDermott has won me over, I think, over the last maybe 5 to 6 games. And again, with that article, man, look, the Bills were 6-6 and they were flailing. This was a team that looked like they were going nowhere. You could argue about the timing of the article, but it was a good thing for the Bills because it rallied them. Let me ask you a question too, by the way. Have you happened to watch that HBO Hard Knocks series with the Dolphins, the in-season one?
No, I've not.
All right. Well, last night I haven't either. There's been 8 episodes. I haven't watched any of the first 7. I did watch last night being Tuesday night because it was about the Bills game largely. I tell you, watching that, if you're I have a couple takeaways from that. Mike McDaniel is an offensive guru. Like, I wish he would be the Bills offensive coordinator. And I'm sure there's 31 other teams, or at least close to it, that would love to have Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator. Dude's just weird though, man. Like his because again, you know how Hard Knocks works. The access is amazing. They show a lot of his speeches in the team meetings, practices on the field, so on and so forth. He's a weird dude. But Tua, I got to tell you, man, and this isn't me just hating on Miami because I'm a Bills guy and it's just fun to pile on the Dolphins. He's a pretty good quarterback. We've talked about him before. He's a really good, solid human being, a nice guy, somebody worth rooting for, and we both have agreed to that. But I'll tell you, the difference between him and Josh Allen is literally night and day. Not just on the field, which you will see on Sundays, but also on the sidelines, in the team meetings, in the locker room. Like he's a guy. He's a guy in that locker room. Josh is the alpha. Josh is the leader. Everybody knows that and it's not even just the Bills and Josh Allen. Most teams, your quarterback is your leader. He's your guy. And you get a sense just watching this Hard Knocks. Tua's not that guy. He's very reserved, quiet. He's laid back. I don't think you could be a quarterback, a great quarterback in this league like that. And then the other thing I noticed too, Miami, and now I know this, they were not confident at all. I mean, they knew what was on the line and they were enthusiastic and all, but it was almost like, and I'm sure a lot of people, if you're watching or listening and you saw this episode, would agree, they weren't confident. It was almost like they had a mindset that Buffalo's coming. Buffalo's going to, this is happening again. The Bills own us. I mean, they've said it on the show and stuff like that. But watching that episode, you just got a sense that Miami kind of felt like Buffalo is the better team. And ultimately they were.
They were in a different position last week, right? I mean, when you're the leader, it's that's different, right? When you're the hunted versus being the hunter. And like last year, even like through the season, even in the playoffs, it's just like, hey, the plucky Dolphins with their new head coach, and he's kind of quirky and a little bit different from the norm and having success with it. Like, it was a good story, and it's still a good story. But how teams play when all of a sudden, like, you're in that position, you saw that maybe the Bills have had more experience in those type of situations than the Dolphins. have. And, not just even, comparing the leadership from one quarterback to another, or the head coach to another, right? You've got some stark differences between both, but it's like being in those type of situations, how teams respond from it, how they learn. I'll be really curious to see how the Dolphins do this weekend against the Chiefs. I mean, for obvious reasons, but I mean, coming back from the stretch that they have had with these last couple of games against the Ravens and then the Bills, and now you go to Arrowhead and it's going to be like 5 degrees below zero. Like this is one that is going to test them. I think we're going to learn a lot about the Dolphins. Like, what kind of fortitude do they have right now? And I'm really interested to see what they look like.
Well, we'll talk a little bit Chiefs Miami later on, but I'll give you a spoiler alert right now. They're done. It's over. They're done. That Baltimore game ruined them. Getting smacked the way they did in Baltimore, I think that ruined them. It ruined their confidence. I think you saw it on HBO this week, and then the Bills beat them, and now they're going to Kansas City where it's going to be like -5 degrees with all those injuries. I think that's a wrap for the Miami Dolphins. I know, again, I like to be bold and maybe say some outlandish shit that can make me look dumb, down the road. But conversely, Anthony, when we preview games and I'm predicting that Dawson Knox is scoring touchdowns ahead of time, and Deontay Hardy, I didn't say he was going to score a touchdown, but I said he was going to bust one, and I called him out specifically, and that comes true. I'm going to take a little bit of a victory lap. I've been waiting all week, by the way, to do this show with you, because it was us last week who did the preview show where I got to predict that Dawson Knox was going to score a touchdown. And then I doubled down with Matt Marino at Live at Imperial the next day as well. So don't think I wasn't going to let you, remind you about that.
No, it was, you know what? I mean, when you think about it, and the fact that you went 2 for 2, and like it was a good 2 for 2, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, listen, the the Hardy pick, I mean, that's a bases loaded walk-off grand slam type of hit. The Dawson Knox one, it was like a solid double, right? For what it was, and for him to, make a great effort to get into the end zone in a big spot was definitely needed. But I was smiling when I think about that stuff, because it just was, we do enough of these shows, you talk about these things, but those weren't two predictions that would just make sense. For you to go with those two guys and for them to both hit, that's all right, man.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be fair, man. When you throw enough darts against the wall, especially when you're bold about it like I am, sooner or later you're going to hit on a couple of them. As long as you let the fans know when you hit and you try to make them forget about it, when you miss, you say you were just joking, all that stuff, then it's okay.
Pat, you're a big music guy, right? I know we don't talk music a ton with this, but like
we will during the off season, but
but when those albums drop, like they play the hits for a reason, right? There's other tracks that can be forgotten, and that's okay. That's like, just keep playing the hits, man. It's okay.
That game itself, a couple takeaways. We talked about Sean McDermott. I do think this defense in tight or in big situations is definitely different now. There's no more of that prevent shit playing 15 yards off the line. I really like that. We both agree that Sean McDermott deserves a lot of credit for turning this season around. I think he has a lot to do with it. Little things too, going for it multiple times on 4th and short, especially twice on the last drive as well. I feel like the old Sean McDermott would have punted and just relied on the defense. He went for the knockout there, and I respected that about him. I thought Sean McDermott was great. And then the other thing that you realize from time to time, and I think Sunday was, man, did it ever encapsulate Josh Allen. He plays terrible at times. He makes just mistakes that just make you want to pull your hair right out of your head. You're screaming at the TV. You're angry. You're mad. How could you do this? How could you be so dumb at times, right? But he's one of the few quarterbacks in the league now or anytime recently that is just good enough. He's talented enough to overcome the mistakes he makes, because man, oh man, some of the plays he made, especially with his legs on Sunday, were just incredible. That throw fade away to Stephon Diggs, where Stephon made a great catch too for 30-something yards. Just in a couple of those runs. That 3rd and 13 run on that final drive where it looked like 3 guys had him and he still plowed ahead of him and got the first down. He's a remarkable player, a remarkable talent, and he's, again, one of the very few that are just good enough to overcome mistakes. If Tua plays like that in the first half, Miami loses by 4 scores. Seriously. But Josh is just different.
Yeah, he is different. And it is, the interesting thing is too, when you take a look back at it, and I get it, they won the game. You could say they only scored 21 points. Josh Allen played a great game on Sunday. Now, there's 3 plays you want to take back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically 30 seconds of football that you look to erase. And it's not that you just forget about those pieces. But this wasn't one of those where it's just like, yeah, they scored 21 points. Josh was great. He made all these big runs. He converted the 4th and 1s. Like, he's completing like over 75% of his passes. You see a really good game from Stephon Diggs coming back. Nice game from Dalton Kincaid. Great game from Khalil Shakir, right? Spreading the ball around. High percentage of completions. Yeah, a couple of mistakes. I mean, even that second interception, it's like, okay, it's 4th down. Credit the Dolphins defense. Gabe Davis trips up in the end zone. Honestly, that interception worked out okay for the Bills. Like, what were you kicking, a 50-some yard field goal? Like, maybe you make that. If you don't, you put them in great position. If you don't convert the 4th down, they're getting the ball at the 36-yard line.
Right.
Here, in essence, it's a punt into the end zone. Not as big of a deal, right? The fumble, like, yeah, do you want to see him secure the ball and that not to happen? Again, credit to the guys on the Dolphins. They made a play. Like, Christian Wilkins blew it up. Like, all right, it happens. And the first one, is kind of maddening too, because you're just like, gosh, that should have been a pass interference call on Dawson Knox. How was it not? I mean, and that's not just one of these of like, oh, Anthony, you're a homer or this and that. Like,
sure.
Like that was as blatant as it comes. And then the next play, like, it is what it is. But I mean, 97% of what he did on the field the other day was great. And it's like, considering how things have been going, where it's like, gosh, these really slow starts where the offense isn't clicking. And I get it. If it doesn't result in points, what does it mean? But to be marching down the field early, getting guys involved, making these completions, again, just the timing with Diggs on some of those bombs. Like, can we get to that point? But it's just like, Josh was great on Sunday, and that's a step in the right direction at the right time heading into the playoffs.
If Josh connects with Stephon and dude, Stephon cooked Jalen Ramsey. He had him cooked, and Josh just overshot it. Diggs could have had 150 yards in the first half if he hits on that play. Look, we got the full entire Josh Allen experience on Sunday. Love it, hate it, stress. It's fun. It's fun. Maybe not so much fun if you're a Bills fan at times anyway. And to your point, too, with a couple bad breaks, should have never thrown it short of the end zone to Ty Johnson. But in fairness, that play still should have resulted in points because Ty Johnson took a blow to the head, has a concussion. As things stand right now, we don't know what his status is going to be for the week as we record this, but that should have been a penalty too on Miami. And Baker got away with one there, Jerome Baker, the Miami linebacker. But yeah, man, Josh Allen, he's just, if you put him on Miami, Miami wins that game. That's basically what I'm telling you. He's just a different animal, and he's just so much better than Tua, and he's pretty much so much better than almost anyone else. Also want to credit Brandon Beane. This felt to me like kind of a Brandon Beane game, and I say that because these unheralded, well, I don't want to say unheralded free agents because they were signed with the intention of having a pretty big role, but guys like Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy and Taylor Rapp, guys who were expected to have a pretty significant role this season, really haven't. They've been mostly, uneventful seasons for all of them, but they all stepped up in this game and had very, very big moments. Hardy's punt return, of course, Sherfield with a great catch for a touchdown, having the knowledge to know where his feet were and still come down with the ball. And then Taylor Rapp, back-to-back plays at the end of the game. Not just the interception to seal it, but the play before that where he knocks down the ball that Tyreek Hill otherwise catches inside the 20-yard line if Rapp doesn't make that play. Those are Brandon Beane guys. So I want to make sure I give Brandon Beane some credit here because those guys had significant impact in this game.
Now, significant impact, and I mean, at least two of them on bargain contracts, right? When you talk about Taylor Rapp and Trent Sherfield, I mean, 1-year deals, like something around $1.5 million type of piece. I mean, it's what you need to see. And that's when you talk about like the team feeling different, the ability for guys to step up and make plays. That eases the burden on some of the guys. Like when you talk about Stephon Diggs, who again I thought was great on Sunday, 7 of 8 targets, going for receptions, 80 some yards. Like that's what you need. Sure, you want to see the bomb hit, but like then when you see Sheffield making plays, you got Kincaid making plays, Khalil Shakir, that frees up things for him. It relieves that burden of just like, well, let's force it to Diggs because nothing else is working. Like, that's how you want to see the offense kind of contribute each and every week. But yeah, a bit of a victory lap for Brandon Beane to say the least. I'll throw Balin Spector into that mix too, right?
Sure.
Just late round draft pick, and here's a guy that comes in, his numbers called, and making plays.
You really had to appreciate the depth that the Buffalo Bills have. For Dotson to get hurt, Rasul Douglas to get hurt during this game, and Baylor Spector steps in, and I thought he played great. Pretty interesting too that Sean McDermott went with Balin Spector over Dorian Williams in that situation as well. And I think you mentioned Dane Jackson earlier too. I mean, he had a couple big plays. He had a huge third down tackle, Braxton Berrios short of the 4th down marker, which forced a punt. And he had a big third down pass breakup too. So yeah, really big performances from guys that you wouldn't have expected, which is funny. Jokes aside, I said I'm taking my victory lap, with Dawson Knox. And because I don't want to say I hit on Hardy because I didn't call a touchdown. I said he was going to bust one. But if I told you before this game, hey, Anth, because we did do a show last week, like we do most of these, and we make our predictions and keys to victory. If I would have said, hey, Anthony, I think a big key to the Bills' victory this Sunday is going to be Taylor Rapp, Dane Jackson, Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, and Balin Spector. You're like, huh? You know what I'm saying? But they did. So anyway, let's take a real quick break, come back on the other side, and we'll talk about Pittsburgh a little bit and then kind of get into some keys to this game and, of course, predictions as well. Be right back. All right, I am back here with Anthony Marino from Buffalo Rumblings. By the way, if you're watching this on the video side, the beard growth from losing my bet to my son is not doing so great, man. Have you ever grown a beard? Have you ever tried to grow a beard?
Yeah, I did. I did no shave November once, and you know what? Like when you do it, and I remember the phase that you're in right now of just like, my gosh, I'm not built for this genetically, and what takes place. And then once you get through like that awkward, first 10 days and it starts to fill in, I think you might be surprised. I'm looking forward to this, man. I really am.
I'm not, man. So there's patchy areas where I know they're just not going to fill in. And by the way, by the time they might, I'm probably the bet will be over and I'll have the option to shave. And I probably will. I'm not meant to have facial hair. Just some people can rock a beard. Some people can rock a mustache and they look great. Like, can you imagine Sal Capaccio without a mustache? You know what I mean? It'd just be weird. That's how I feel. Like it's been my routine my whole life. I get up, I brush my teeth, I shave every day. That's like been my whole life. One time when we lived in Florida, I did attempt for probably a good 2 months to grow a beard. That's how I'm confident that I know it's not going to work out. Because it got too patchy. We'll see. But anyway, it is what it is. I'm starting to feel a little more ridiculous. You know how it is. You feel like people are looking at you funny, even if they're not. You just have that inner sense. That's kind of how I feel. Anyway, all right. Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town this Sunday without TJ Watt. We got to start there. I mean, this is a football team. They're 10-7. I get it. They earned a playoff spot, sort of. I mean, they beat a bunch of Baltimore backups. They did beat Seattle on the road, though, the week before. That was an impressive game. They had to have that. They beat Cincinnati at home the week before that. So they've won 3 in a row now. They've also lost at home back-to-back before that to Arizona and the Patriots. I'm going to throw that out there as well. But to me, the big story of this game is TJ Watt. TJ Watt is not just maybe the best defensive player in the NFL, and he will win NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He's had 19 sacks this year. He's going to win that. he might be one of the top 5 to 6 players in the NFL. Like he'll finish top 10, I think, in MVP voting this year. Anyway, he ain't playing. He hurt his knee in the Baltimore game and he's out. To me, that would be the equivalent of the Bills having to play a team without Stephon Diggs or without having to play with like Ed Oliver and Leonard Floyd on the defensive line. That's how important I think TJ Watt is to the Steelers. So let's start there and him not playing.
Yeah, it's a huge blow for the Steelers. And I would even argue that, here's a guy, and that's no disrespect to Leonard Floyd or Ed Oliver or even Stephon Diggs. Like for them, that is probably even a bigger loss, right? Because that is just a guy that makes everything work and tick for their defense. When he is on the field, that is priority one of just like, where is he and how do you contain him in any way, shape, or form? So as I look at that, he's a bit of a unicorn, and I don't use that term lightly. So him being out, that is huge for them. I mean, they still have a talented defense and other players that are there, but I'm not going to just kind of aw shucks this one away. Like, yeah, that is a huge loss for them, not just with his play, kind of the emotion that he brings. I mean, good gosh, they were showing some clip. Everybody circled around him pregame against the Ravens on Saturday. And it's just like, man, I wish there was a microphone on him because he was like going in circles with these guys and they were bought in. And it was just like, I just want to know what he's saying right now to all of them. So he is one of the top 10 players in the NFL. I think that is easy to say, and a tough loss for the Steelers coming out of Saturday's game.
There's a handful of guys who could really change a game on the defensive line. He's certainly one of them. A couple sacks, a forced fumble, an interception. He could just do so many things. Yeah, that's such a big loss for them. I kind of get the sense, if I was a Steelers fan, they're 7-7. I don't think they're that good. I think their quarterback sucks. And like, I get a sense that to some extent, they're going to just be happy to make the playoffs. I feel like if you're a Steelers fan, to some extent, you're probably feeling that way. Now, what I will give them credit for is Mike Tomlin. He is a good coach. 17 years, and they've never had a losing record. That is incredible. That's hard to do over the course of 17 years. I get that kind of sense with the Steelers. And they do have weapons. I mean, they got 2 good running backs. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are 2 very good running backs. They got 2 good receivers, George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. They got a decent tight end, Pratt Fairmouth. A couple guys on defense. I don't think their defense is that good, especially without TJ Watt. But they still got a couple guys on defense. But dude, you got Mason Rudolph, man. That's your quarterback. Come on, Anthony. I'm gonna talk you into a blowout.
No, you're not. I mean, and listen, it's just like look at how much better their offense has been with him playing. And I kind of throw the game against Baltimore out the window. I mean, honestly, I don't even remember some of those statistics. I mean, you were watching that broadcast. I mean, it was torrential downpours, horrible the entire game. Now we might have a weather game on Sunday too, so that part plays in. But when you have a team that has weapons, that has kind of like a 2-headed monster at running back for what they can do, you talk about these guys. It's just like, yeah, you're not going to talk me into a blowout. Like I have, and I say this like whatever. My level of respect for Mike Tomlin should have like zero impact on anything. But like as a coach, you talk about this, never a losing season in 17 years. Like, yeah, that doesn't happen by mistake. In this day and age of the NFL, where you see, well, it's like, coaches, it becomes a bit of a revolving door. I mean, heck, we talked about Sean McDermott earlier. Like, hey, maybe it's time for a change. Like, time for a change. Like the team had made the playoffs the last 4 years. Like there's a level of impatience that comes with this. So for what he does for this team to be able to win 10 games this year, and again, hey, I get it. Like they lost to the Cardinals, they lost to the Patriots. Like, those things happen. Like it does, but I'm not going to look beyond them because it's just, he's one of the best coaches. I mean, he's a future Hall of Famer. Like I'm confident in saying that he gets more out of a team than he should. So they're going to be a little bit plucky on Sunday.
Nothing to lose.
Yeah, nothing to lose at all. And to that point, like you say, like, yeah, maybe their fans are just happy to be there. It's like, yeah, the season was a success. We made the playoffs. that's not coming from Tomlin and his
Right.
team. So they're going to be a little pesky. They're probably going to stick around a bit longer than you want them to, and just kind of be that annoying, like in a way, like, all right, let's just get this win. But you're probably not going to come away from it feeling great at the end, like, oh, that was just a walk in the park. Like, it's the playoffs. It's not supposed to be.
Of all the things you mentioned, there's one thing that does concern me, one thing only, and that is the weather. This could be a weather game. There could be potential. I was just looking at weather reports not long before we started taping this here on a Wednesday morning. The weather could be bad. It could be really shitty. It could be a lot of snow, and that could slow down. People. I know this is Orchard Park, and it's the fans that give the Bills a huge home field advantage. But I want, ideally, for the Buffalo Bills and the way this offense is, I want a dry field. I don't need 30-mile-an-hour winds, even though Josh can rip the ball and anything. I don't need snow. I don't need heavy winds when the Bills are playing. Look, and we'll get to the three keys here. And I got to start with the most obvious one, and that is just make Mason Rudolph beat you. All right? Stop the run. Because if Pittsburgh will do one thing effectively that could scare me if the Bills don't tackle well, or if they're not, if the defense is getting off blocks, is running the football. I think you're going to see a lot of Tyrell Dodson if he could play. I don't know. We don't know what his shoulder stat is. If not, Balin Spector. I think especially on the early downs, Pittsburgh's going to try to shorten this game, keep Josh Allen off the field. They are going to do their damnedest to run the football. So a key for me for the Bills, stack an extra guy in the box and make them throw the football and beat you. Stop the run. That's the biggest thing for me with the Bills.
No, I completely agree, right? So the weather plays into it. That is a part. Even if it was a crystal clear day, you can look at those things and say, like, that is probably a priority. We've seen Linval Joseph be inactive the last couple of games. Do we see him back in this matchup to, again, have that additional run stuffer? Poona Ford's done some nice things the last couple of weeks, but what does that look like with the rotation? I'll be curious to see what takes place there. And from a linebacker standpoint, that'll be critical. We've seen, Jordan Poyer playing closer to the box in different situations with, him and Micah Hyde and Taylor Rapp on the field at the same time. Taron Johnson, albeit undersized, brings a bit of a linebacker mentality to the play and what he does. And I do hope that Tyrell Dodson will be healthy, because no disrespect to Balin Spector and what he was able to do last week. Tyrell Dodson has been playing some nice football. And I think that kind of physical downhill presence that he brings, like, the Bills are going to need more of that on Sunday. And I hope that he's going to be okay.
There's certain teams where I think Tyrell Dodson is a better matchup for it. I think Pittsburgh is one of those football teams. He has played pretty well too. I was really dismissive of him throughout a lot of this season, but he's played well. I do have more confidence now in Balin Spector after watching him play in Miami, though. And you never want to see an injury, but the fact that Balin Spector, if Dodson can't go this week, and we'll learn more over the next couple of days, of course, but the fact that he's going to get a week of reps as a starter, I think is important as well. So I mentioned the weather is a potential equalizer in any, not just Buffalo, but in any game situation. The big equalizer is always going to be turnovers. That's always the great equalizer. So that's my second key. You can't have a game like, say, the Miami game last week. You want to keep a team that's inferior to you, at least on paper, in a game. Well, the best way to do that is to throw 2 interceptions in the end zone and have a strip sack fumble when you get sacked, and other things like that. So it goes without saying, and it's simple and elementary, but don't turn the ball over. Maybe 2 turnovers max is for the Bills is what I think they can afford and still be fine. If you get past 1 to 2 turnovers, you're looking for a lot of trouble at that point.
Well, you're looking for a lot of trouble, and I think, right, what was it, the home opener in 2021? Bills are coming off an appearance in the AFC Championship game. You open the season against the Steelers, and it's a blocked punt that goes back for a touchdown that really ends up being the difference in that game. And I think it's those types of things too that you keep in mind not just the turnovers, but when you think of that special teams aspect to it, the Steelers have someone on their team. I'm drawing a blank. I think it was, I can't remember. Maybe it was Matt Perino had a recent guest on, and he was on the Shout podcast talking about it. They've got one guy on their team that's blocked 3 punts so far this season. Like, yeah, make sure the punt protection is in place, because that is something that can be critical, and we've seen it in the past. So, yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, limiting the turnovers goes without saying, but, some of those turnovers are more critical than others. Again, the Josh Allen interception, 4th and 2, kind of arm punt to the end zone, and, actually works out okay for you. That's fine. Block punts when you're kicking out of your own end zone, that's a little different story. So, yeah, I'm totally with you there.
And the last thing, just don't play it on the competition. I'm sorry. The Steelers are not on the same level as the Buffalo Bills. I know, especially you respect this organization. We both respect Mike Tomlin. There are a couple weapons worth mentioning that could hurt you if you're not careful, but the Bills are, without question, the better football team. Don't play down to them like you did Denver or the Giants or Tampa. You're the better football team. They've played better at home recently. They smacked Dallas, they smacked the Jets, and then they did not play so well against the Patriots. That game was closer than it needed to be. Again, I know that you have more respect, as you should. I'm wrong. I should have more respect for the opponent than I do. And I'm going to admit that openly. I don't. And if I said I did, I'd be lying, because I just don't think, short of the Bills killing themselves, I just don't see a way they lose this football game. So I guess I'm just saying, play crisp, sound football, and just don't play down to the competition, because that is something that the Bills have been guilty of a lot this season.
They've been playing down to the competition since week 4.
Yeah.
Every game where you can look at and say, you should put away the Broncos, did not. The Giants, the Patriots in both games, Tampa Bay, you can look at, they have just not put it away in the way that they should against, the Chargers, right? You can talk about all of these games. So that's the piece where you look at it. It's the NFL. It's going to be competitive. You see it each and every week, right? So just, I'm with you, and I hear what you're saying. This is kind of part of my defense mechanism too. So
it is. I get it.
You put that shield up, and then once the clock hits 0 on Sunday, if there's a reason to celebrate, I'll celebrate.
I laugh because I think if I ever had you and Tone Potts on the show at the same time, like if we did a 3-person show, I think you would be cringe, because I don't know if you watched the show a couple of days ago, and it was unprovoked. I didn't know he was doing it, but so Tone Potts comes in studio with me, usually on Monday nights, and we just kind of put a wrap on the game before we shoot the shit, talk all kinds of stuff. Anyway, he came onto the set here in my home studio with a white t-shirt saying "Feed me KC." He refused to even discuss the Pittsburgh Steelers, and all he kept talking about the whole episode was wanting the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm thinking about that, and him just not even, acknowledging the Steelers, whereas you are being much more, again, centered here and respecting the opponent. I to be fair to you, you're absolutely more right. I mean, you can't completely look past any team. I don't care if they were playing the Arizona Cardinals. You can't utterly look past the team, which he did. But I also thought it was kind of funny that he had a Feed Me KC shirt on before they even play the Steelers, or before the Chiefs even play Miami. Anyway, all right, well, it's prediction time. We do this every week now. Let's start with game predictions, and then I want to go after, and maybe we'll come up with a couple standout players or something like that. But let's start with the game. Give me your game prediction.
Yeah, I'll go 21-13 Buffalo. Like I said, a little closer than it needs to be. Maybe one of those scenarios where it's like, yeah, you're kind of in control of this game, but never where you build it enough to the point where you can just feel comfortable, at the end. So, right, I mean, still a 1-score game when you look at it from that standpoint. And I think, a lot of times we talk about these scores, we're projecting a lot of points. The Bills haven't been putting up those like huge offensive explosion type of games. Certainly with a team like Pittsburgh and their scheme, what the weather is going to be on Sunday, a little bit more conservative with the prediction. So again, that's what I'm looking at.
Okay. I'm going to go 30-12 Buffalo. I think Pittsburgh might have a drive early in the game where they have some success and they look good, and then I think Sean will make some adjustments and he'll shut it down. The offense might take a little bit to get rolling, but I think eventually they will. I just don't think without TJ Watt, especially on defense, I just don't think Pittsburgh has the manpower to stop the Bills' offense. Which, by the way, again, this is the one thing I hate about taping, especially early on a Wednesday. Minka Fitzpatrick, a very good safety, hasn't been playing. I think Mike Tomlin said he was limited at practice and that he's hopeful or optimistic about his chances of playing. But regardless, I just think the Bills just have too much talent, and as the game wears on, I think they'll pull away 30-12. Give me, and we did this last week too, maybe one or two standout players, like not counting Josh Allen. Good, that's just again that's low hanging fruit. But give me a player or two that you envision in your mind having a pretty significant impact on the game.
Yeah, so if we're talking on offense, and it's boring because I'm going with the same pick as last week, but this should be a game where Dalton Kincaid gets like a dozen targets. Mm-hmm. Like from a linebacker standpoint and for what the Steelers do, there is no way that they should be able to guard him over the middle of the field. And it should end up being something like 10 catches for 90 some yards, right? Not, nothing crazy, nothing huge along these lines. But when you talk about just kind of like some, and I know this isn't the definition of chunk plays, but like, 9-10 yards here and there, just kind of keep moving down the field for what the weather is going to be. Dalton Kincaid, I think he's going to be that guy. And on the defensive side, we talked about him before, but Taron Johnson, right? I mean, that is going to be
He's so good.
He is so good. And I just see this being one of those games where he can make one of those game-changing type of plays, right? Kind of just being active in that area, whether it's like punching the ball out from one of their running backs, whether it's kind of a, corralling in a tip pass, whatever it is. Like, here's a guy in these types of games that he makes plays. So Taron Johnson, that's going to be my second pick.
Yeah, I'm not going to go with Taron Johnson, but I will tell you, watch the All-22 film, and God, he is so good. He is just around the football. He's such a good tackler. He's such an aggressive tackler. Yeah. He's so good in coverage, even if he gives up a catch, but he doesn't give up any yards after the catch. He's just such a great player. It's so easy to take him for granted. I don't study 31 other teams, or I'm not familiar with secondaries for 31 other teams. I just find it impossible to believe that there's more than maybe one or two better slot corners in the NFL than that guy. He's awesome. I'm not going to go bold this time, but offensively, I think James, you said him last week. I'm going to say him this week. I don't know. Actually, you didn't say him last week, but James Cook. I think this is going to be a good game for James Cook. I think Pittsburgh's going to be horrified of Josh Allen running the ball and throwing the football. I just feel like the creases are going to be there. The Bills did not run the football very well against Miami. Outside of Josh Allen, the offensive line struggled in run blocking. I think they're going to run the football especially if the weather's shittier. I think they're going to run the football pretty effectively, and I think James Cook is in line for a big game. He's going to get in the end zone too, which I know, like, normally it'd be like, oh, running back scored a touchdown. What a bold prediction. James Cook don't be scoring touchdowns rushing the ball because Josh Allen takes them all. But James Cook's going to find the end zone on Sunday. And then defensively, maybe not a big game statistically, but I love DaQuan Jones in this game. I think Pittsburgh is going to try really hard to run the ball, sustain drives between the tackles, and I think DaQuan Jones is going to have a lot to say about that. He'll help shut down that run, take up blockers, and force Mason Rudolph to be a thrower. And in that case, the way Sean McDermott's been scheming this year, I think it's going to be an ugly day for the Steelers. I just talked myself into it. Forget 30-12. It's going to be 37-12. I just gave the Bills another touchdown.
Well, now you're like, I gotta respect the Steelers more, and then you're just like, yeah,
no, it's gonna be 37-12. And DaQuan Jones is gonna have a good game. Anyway, all right, before I let you go, assume, all right, I'm gonna force you to assume that the Bills get past this game, okay? Let's say the Bills, or I'll even make it easy for you. For the sake of discussion, the Bills beat the Steelers, okay? I want you to power rank the potential 3 opponents for the divisional round, because you got Kansas City, you got Cleveland, and you got Houston. Kansas City plays Miami, for everybody out there who doesn't know, on Saturday night. If Kansas City wins and the Bills win, of course, we're assuming the Bills win. But if Kansas City beats Miami, the Bills are playing Kansas City. If Kansas City loses and Miami wins, the Bills are playing the winner of Cleveland at Houston. As things stand right now, and no matter who the Bills play, I know you're going to have a ton of respect for them. And so will I, because these are 3 good football teams, by the way. But I want you to try on the flyer, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this ahead of time because I just didn't want to. But Cleveland, Houston, Kansas City. I want you to power rank in order of preference who you would like to play in the next round, potentially.
I don't want to play Cleveland.
Thank you. Okay.
And I don't know. I mean, good gosh. I mean, again, if you said however many months ago, like Joe Flacco playing quarterback and whatever, but that is a defense that you just look at and you're just kind of like, I don't know, man, there's something about that team that is working and it shouldn't be working, right? I mean, they even should have lost to the Bears a couple weeks ago. They kind of like pittered that one away type of thing. Like, but there's just something about Cleveland that you look at and you're just like, yeah, that's probably the one I don't want to play.
Agreed. I'm with you.
And I don't know what it is with that, right? Maybe it's just a little bit of the unknown. I mean, Kansas City would be an easy choice, but I think when you look at KC, it's like, okay, you've played them enough, you know them enough from a preparation standpoint. Like, again, and I mean, I said this to you before. I can look at every one of these teams and say why I don't want to play them.
Sure.
But from that standpoint, and it's, and I guess if I'm going to say with the Texans, it would just be a little bit different based on the inexperience. Sure. So maybe with them, it's just, again, CJ Stroud doing great stuff. You could see a Devin Singletary, Jerry Hughes revenge type of game scenario playing out. There's so many things that the Texans are doing well. The new rookie head coach, D'Amico Ryan's doing a great job. Like, so all of this, it's like you get to this point where you don't want to play anyone, but yeah, there's just something weird about that Browns matchup and Myles Garrett and the way their defense is playing that you're just kind of like, yeah, if we don't have to play them, I'll be okay.
It's funny because when I had Tone Pucks on the other day and he was just talking about Kansas City, Kansas City, I said, look, they are still a Super Bowl defending champions. They still have Pat Mahomes, still have Travis Kelce. They still have Chris Jones. They can figure it out. They have Andy Reid. They have a championship pedigree, and that matters. So I was like, you're crazy. But after we were done and we're sitting there in my living room and we're talking after, I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather play them than Cleveland. Because I started thinking about Cleveland. And Cleveland's defense is really, really good. And they got Amari Cooper and they got a great tight end and they can run the football a little bit. And they got Elijah Moore's rejuvenation. Like, so if I had to go in order of preference, I think I'd want to play Cleveland the least of the 3. Plus, the Bills just know Kansas City a lot better. Now, vice versa as well. They can prepare for us a lot easier too because they know the Bills. But I'm like, yeah, I think I'd rather play Cleveland the least than Kansas City. And with respect to Houston, they are good. CJ Stroud's good, but I'd always rather, especially, because CJ Stroud's going to be at home this week. Now, they say he never played a playoff game. Last week was a playoff game for Houston, essentially. They went to Indy. They won on the road. So, and he's a good quarterback. And they got a lot of good players too. But in that situation, I definitely would prefer to play Houston if things work out. It's an irrelevant point, though, Anthony, because I told you at the beginning of this show, Miami's done. So the Bills are playing.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you there. No. And I'm not going out and making a pick with it or anything along those lines. But, for the Dolphins, they get back a Jalen Waddle. If they get back Raheem Mostert, like those are 2 guys that make a difference for what their offense can be. And I'm just not going to say that they're done. Right. I think it's going to be a good game on Saturday night. I think it's going to be relatively close. Might be a little bit ugly. Again, we talk about the weather and what that can mean. Like that part is not lost on me, but I'm not, I'm not closing the door on the Dolphins just yet.
I just don't think they have the grind. I don't think they have that dog in them to go into Kansas City in -5 degree potential weather, especially as decimated as they are on defense and be able to beat the Chiefs. And it's not a given that Waddle or Mostert are going to play. Plus, Tyreek Hill's got an ankle and a quad. I expect he'll play, but not 100%. But anyway, let's just put it this way. I'm fully anticipating next week when we get together, you and I are going to be talking about a Bills-Chiefs playoff game. Pat Mahomes playing on the road in the playoffs for the first time in his entire career. that's going to be potentially, I'll say potentially to make you happy. It's potentially going to be a pretty wild week next week in a preview show. NFC, there's no a need to really talk about the NFC, but just out of curiosity, Dallas, Green Bay, Detroit, the Rams, and then Philly and Tampa. You like any underdogs in that game or of those games, I should say?
I wouldn't really consider the Rams so much an underdog, right? Just as you look at things, and I'm not even quite sure what the spread is.
It's only 3.
So I think that is one of those games that plenty of storylines, right? When you think about just Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit, even for the years of success he had with the Lions, he never played a home playoff game. So this will be his first time playing a playoff game in the Superdome. So I just think that one's going to be that's going to be the most interesting of the 3 games. I mean, yeah, what might happen with the Bucs and the Eagles? I mean, the Eagles are in a really weird, rough stretch right now and totally not looking like themselves. But it is that game, the Rams and the Lions. That one I think can be kind of fun. Maybe you'll see some fireworks there, and maybe get that shootout type of high scoring game that that can really entertain you a bit on Sunday night.
I am rooting. The only team in the NFC that I think I'm openly going to be rooting for are the Detroit Lions. Shout out my man Joe Yurden, by the way, big long time Detroit Lions fan. But that is also the game, I agree with you, where I could see the road team going in and winning. I could definitely see the Rams winning. All right, so we're going to get out of here. By the way, 25 years ago today, as we tape this, the greatest TV series of all time premiered, The Sopranos. Little fun fact for you. Were you a Sopranos guy? Did you watch it? You like it?
I liked it. I wasn't that like religious Sopranos watcher. I think I probably I think I started maybe in like season 2 or season 3, right? Like this was before streaming or anything. So I was a little bit late to the game, but it was one of those things. Sunday nights, lived in, an apartment with a bunch of other guys, like watch The Sopranos, and we'd watch Entourage or Arliss or whatever it was that would come up after it. Like that just kind of became the routine. So, unlike many, I don't go back and watch episodes. It doesn't hold this place in my heart. Like, for others that it does, is the greatest TV show of all time, but certainly enjoyed it back in the day.
My son, 21 years old, he hasn't watched it yet, and I'm kind of pushing him and his girlfriend keep like picking series and binging them, and I'm kind of nudging him. I said, you got to at least watch this series. Maybe he doesn't love it the way I did, but it's something that you at least have to watch. But anyway, all right, make sure you follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Marino, and be sure not just to check out this podcast daily, but make sure you come back next Thursday for Anthony and I's Bills Kansas City Chiefs divisional round preview, because that's what it's going to be.
Dude, you're killing me, man. You're killing me.
All right, guys, I will be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.